A bag of apples costs about $5 and gives you maybe 6 to 8 apples. A box of sugary cereal costs $4 and provides 12 servings. Fresh chicken breast costs about $6 a pound. A box of frozen chicken nuggets costs $4 for 2 pounds. Fresh broccoli is $3 per pound. A bag of potato chips is $3 for 8 ounces, but feels like a better value because it's already prepared and lasts longer in your pantry. If you're on a tight budget, the math seems obvious. Processed, unhealthy food gives you more calories per dollar than fresh, healthy food. But why? Today, I'm going to walk you through the economics of food production, explain why fresh fruits and vegetables cost so much while processed junk food is cheap, and show you how this price gap has changed over the past few decades. Let's start by comparing the actual costs of healthy versus unhealthy foods to establish the baseline. Fresh produce versus processed snacks. A pound of fresh apples costs about $2 to $3. That gives you roughly 3 to 4 medium apples, maybe 400 to 500 calories total. Cost per calorie about 0.6 cents. A bag of potato chips costs $3 for 8 ounces, half a pound. That contains about 1,200 calories. Cost per calorie about 0.25 cents. The chips provide calories at less than half the cost per calorie of the apples. Fresh vegetables versus processed sides. A head of fresh broccoli costs about $2.50 and provides maybe 200 calories when cooked. Cost per calorie about 1.25 cents. A box of macaroni and cheese costs $1.50 and provides about 800 calories prepared. Cost per calorie about 0.19 cents. The mac and cheese provides calories at about 1/6 the cost of fresh broccoli. Protein comparison. Fresh chicken breast costs about $6 per pound, providing roughly 550 calories. Cost per calorie about 1.1 cents. Frozen chicken nuggets cost $4 for 2 pounds, providing about 2,000 calories. Cost per calorie about 0.2 cents. The processed nuggets provide protein and calories at 1/5 the cost of fresh chicken. The overall pattern, when you calculate cost per calorie, processed junk food costs less than fresh, healthy food. For a family on a limited budget trying to maximize calories per dollar, buying chips, mac and cheese, frozen nuggets, and sugary cereals makes rational economic sense, even though nutritionally it's terrible. A family of 4 spending $150 per week on groceries can buy significantly more calories from processed foods than from fresh fruits, vegetables, and lean proteins. If the primary goal is not going hungry, processed food wins. This wasn't always the case. In the 1970s and 1980s, the price gap between fresh and processed foods was much smaller. Fresh produce was relatively cheaper and processed foods were more expensive. The economics have shifted dramatically. Let's examine why processed junk food costs so little compared to healthy food. Factor number 1, government subsidies for commodity crops. The U.S. government heavily subsidizes certain crops through farm bills: corn, soybeans, wheat, rice, and cotton. These subsidies make these crops extremely cheap to produce and buy. Corn and soybeans are the foundation of most processed foods. High fructose corn syrup, the sweetener in most sodas and processed foods, comes from subsidized corn. Soybean oil used in most packaged foods comes from subsidized soybeans. Wheat flour, the base of most cereals, breads, and snacks, comes from subsidized wheat. Between 1995 and 2020, the U.S. government paid out over $425 billion in agricultural subsidies, with the vast majority going to these commodity crops. This makes the raw ingredients for junk food artificially cheap. Meanwhile, fruits and vegetables receive almost no subsidies. Farmers growing apples, broccoli, lettuce, carrots, peppers, all the foods we should eat more of, operate without the price support that corn and soybean farmers receive. This fundamental policy creates a price imbalance that favors processed food. Factor number 2, economies of scale in processing. Large food processing companies operate at massive scale. A company like Frito-Lay or General Mills processes millions of pounds of ingredients daily in highly automated facilities. This efficiency drives down per-unit costs dramatically. Once you build a factory that can produce 10,000 boxes of cereal per hour, the marginal cost of each additional box is very low. The ingredients are cheap because they're subsidized commodity crops. The manufacturing is highly automated, minimizing labor. The packaging is mass-produced. Economies of scale make each box cost pennies per produce, even if it sells for $4. Fresh produce doesn't benefit from these economies of scale in the same way. An apple is hand-picked, handled multiple times, transported carefully to avoid bruising, and has a short shelf life. You can't automate apple production the way you can automate cereal production. Factor number 3, long shelf life reduces waste. Processed foods are engineered for long shelf life. A box of crackers lasts months. Frozen chicken nuggets last a year. Canned goods last years. This long shelf life means very little waste in the supply chain. Products sit on shelves until sold, with minimal spoilage. Fresh produce has short shelf life. Apples last a couple weeks under ideal conditions. Leafy greens last days. Berries maybe a week. This means significant waste at every stage, in the field, during transport, at the warehouse, at the store, and in consumers' homes. It's estimated that 30 to 40% of fresh produce is wasted before it's consumed. This waste gets priced into the cost of the produce that does sell. If a retailer knows they'll throw away 30% of the strawberries they buy, they need to charge enough on the 70% they sell to cover the cost of all 100%. Factor number 4, marketing and brand power. Large processed food companies spend billions on advertising and marketing. This creates brand loyalty and allows them to maintain pricing power. But it also allows them to move huge volumes, which again benefits from economies of scale. A massive marketing budget for Doritos or Coca-Cola seems expensive, but when spread across billions of units sold, the per-unit marketing cost is tiny, and the volume generated by that marketing allows for more efficient production. Fresh produce has minimal marketing. You don't see commercials for apples or broccoli the way you see commercials for snack foods. This means less volume, less scale efficiency, and higher per-unit costs. Factor number 5, processing adds perceived value. Consumers will pay more for convenience. A fresh potato costs about 50 cents per pound. A bag of potato chips made from that potato costs $6 per pound. The processing, flavoring, and packaging add perceived value that allows the company to charge more. But because they're operating at scale with cheap ingredients, their profit margins are high even at prices that seem cheap to consumers. Similarly, frozen prepared meals cost more than the raw ingredients would cost, but they save the consumer time and effort, so people pay the premium. And again, the scale of production means companies can sell these items at prices that seem reasonable while maintaining good margins.
Now let's look at why healthy food costs so much from the other direction. Factor number 1, labor-intensive production. Fresh fruits and vegetables require significant hand labor. Apples are hand-picked. Strawberries are hand-picked. Lettuce is hand-harvested. Even crops that can be mechanically harvested still require substantial labor for planting, pruning, and pest management. Labor is expensive, particularly in the U.S., where agricultural workers, though often underpaid, still cost more than workers in countries where much of our processed food ingredients come from, or where automation has replaced workers entirely. Factor number 2, perishability and waste. As mentioned, 30 to 40% of fresh produce is wasted. This is a huge cost factor. Farmers, distributors, retailers, and consumers all bear some of this waste cost, and it gets reflected in higher prices. A grocery store knows that some percentage of their fresh produce will spoil before it sells. They price the produce they do sell high enough to cover the cost of what they throw away. This is why organic produce, which often has higher waste rates due to shorter shelf life without preservatives, costs even more than conventional produce. Factor number 3, transportation and storage costs. Fresh produce requires refrigerated transportation and storage to maintain quality and extend shelf life. Refrigerated trucks cost more to operate than standard trucks. Refrigerated warehouse space costs more than standard warehouse space. Many fruits and vegetables travel thousands of miles from farm to consumer. berries from California to New York, apples from Washington to Florida. The transportation costs for fresh produce are substantially higher per pound than for shelf-stable processed foods. Factor number 4, no subsidies. As mentioned, fresh fruits and vegetables receive minimal government support compared to commodity crops. Farmers growing produce operate in a true market without the safety net that corn and soybean farmers have. This means produce farmers bear more risk. A bad harvest, a pest infestation, an unexpected freeze, these events can financially devastate a produce farmer in ways they wouldn't affect a subsidized commodity crop farmer. This risk gets priced into produce costs. Factor number 5, increasing input costs. Farming costs have increased substantially. Fuel for tractors, fertilizer, water in drought-prone areas, pest control, labor, all have gotten more expensive. For produce farmers without subsidies, these increased input costs flow directly to the price of the final product. Climate change has also increased production challenges. Unpredictable weather, shifting growing seasons, more extreme heat and drought in some areas, more flooding in others, all make produce farming more difficult and expensive. The gap between healthy and unhealthy food prices has widened over the past few decades. Historical comparison. In the 1970s and early 1980s, processed foods were actually relatively expensive compared to fresh foods. A box of cereal was a moderate luxury. Soda was a treat, not a daily staple. Families cooked from scratch because it was cheaper. Through the 1990s and 2000s, as agricultural subsidies expanded, processed food prices decreased in real terms, while fresh produce prices increased. Between 1985 and 2025, the price of fresh fruits and vegetables increased by about 100% after adjusting for inflation. Meanwhile, the price of processed foods, snacks, sweets, and sodas increased by only about 20 to 30% in real terms. This means that in 1985, buying fresh produce versus buying processed snacks was a much more balanced decision economically. Today, the price gap makes processed foods a much more attractive option for budget-conscious families. The impact on diet quality. This price gap has real health consequences. Lower-income families who need to maximize calories per dollar end up buying more processed foods because the math makes sense. Higher-income families can afford to buy fresh produce and lean proteins regardless of the higher cost. The result is a diet quality gap that follows income lines. Wealthier Americans eat more fruits and vegetables. Lower-income Americans eat more processed foods, high in sugar, salt, and unhealthy fats. This contributes to higher obesity rates, diabetes, heart disease, and other diet-related health problems among lower-income populations. Some researchers call this a nutrition penalty, where being poor costs more in terms of health because healthy food is expensive. Given these economic realities, what can individuals and policymakers do to make healthy eating more accessible? For individual consumers, buy seasonal produce. Foods in season are often cheaper because supply is high. Apples in fall, berries in summer, squash in winter. Following seasonal availability saves money. Buy frozen fruits and vegetables. Frozen produce is picked at peak ripeness and flash frozen, locking in nutrients. It has a long shelf life, reducing waste. It's often cheaper than fresh and nutritionally comparable or even superior because it doesn't sit around losing nutrients. Shop at farmers markets towards closing time. Farmers often discount produce at the end of the market day rather than haul it back. You can get good deals on fresh, local produce. Buy ugly produce. Some stores and services now offer cosmetically imperfect produce at discounts. An apple with a blemish is just as nutritious as a perfectly looking apple. Grow your own if possible. A small garden can produce significant amounts of vegetables for minimal cost. Even a few pots on a balcony can grow herbs, tomatoes, peppers. Cook from scratch using cheap base ingredients. Rice, beans, lentils, oats. These staples are inexpensive and healthy.
Learning to cook meals from these basics saves money and improves diet quality. Use sales and coupons strategically. Stock up on produce when it's on sale and freeze it if possible. Many fruits and vegetables freeze well. For policymakers, shift agricultural subsidies towards fruits and vegetables. If we subsidized produce the way we subsidize corn and soybeans, fresh food would be much cheaper. Some proposals suggest redirecting existing subsidies or creating new programs to support produce farmers. Support local food systems. Reducing the distance from farm to table reduces transportation costs and waste, potentially lowering prices. Farmers markets, community-supported agriculture, and regional food hubs can help. Implement programs to increase access to healthy food in low-income areas. SNAP benefits, WIC, school meal programs all can prioritize fruits and vegetables. Some programs already provide incentives, like doubling the value of SNAP benefits when used for produce at farmers markets. Reduced food waste through better supply chain management and consumer education. Reducing the 30 to 40% waste rate would significantly lower produce prices. Regulate or tax unhealthy processed foods. Some jurisdictions have implemented soda taxes or junk food taxes to make unhealthy options less attractive and generate revenue for health programs. This is controversial, but could shift the price balance. The fundamental challenge. The core issue is that our agricultural and economic policies have created a system where the cheapest calories come from the least healthy foods. Reversing this requires significant policy changes that face opposition from powerful agricultural and food industry interests. Eating healthy costs more than eating junk food because government subsidies make commodity crops like corn and soybeans cheap, which makes processed foods cheap, while fresh produce receives no subsidies and requires expensive hand labor, has high waste rates, and needs costly refrigerated transport. The price gap between healthy and unhealthy food has widened dramatically since the 1980s, creating a situation where lower-income families rationally choose cheaper processed foods, leading to diet quality gaps and health disparities. Understanding these economic forces helps explain why it's so hard for many families to eat healthy despite knowing they should. It's not just about willpower or knowledge, it's about economics. If you found this explanation helpful, share it with someone thinking about food costs and nutrition. Leave a comment about strategies you use to eat healthy on a budget, and subscribe for more videos on why essential costs work the way they do. I'll see you in the next one.